night. An immigrant teen and her abortion rights. Mexico City a month later. And the American cities romancing Amazon.
The Philadelphia airport's a 15-minute Uber from here.
The legal fight over an undocumented teenager's right to get an abortion took another turn today when a federal appeals court stepped in. The panel temporarily halted a judge's order that would have allowed the 17-year-old to get the procedure in Texas, where she's being detained. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton praised the appeals court decision, saying that, quote, Texas must not become a sanctuary state for abortions. The ACLU is representing the teen and argues the Trump administration is forcing her to carry a pregnancy against her will.
In the wake of Wednesday's short-lived victory, Jane Doe was accompanied by officials from a federally contracted Texas shelter to and from a clinic where she got counseling and a sonogram. In Texas, women have to meet with doctors 24 hours before they go through with an abortion procedure. Jane Doe has known that she wanted an abortion since early September, and she got the private funds to get it. Because she's a minor, she also needed parental or court consent, and she got that too. On September 25th, a state judge gave Jane Doe a bypass to go forward. But then over the past several weeks, the officials at her shelter will not release her to her appointments. And instead, they've had her under one-on-one surveillance and have taken her to pro-life counseling. I spent the day with Rochelle Garza, Jane Doe's attorney and guardian. What effect is the back and forth on all of this having on Jane?
I think the back and forth on this is affecting her. She's so sure of herself that she's not going to let anything change her mind. So the Trump administration can try whatever they want. They could keep throwing curveballs at her, but she's not going to give up.
Why does Jane Doe's case matter?
Jane Doe's case matters for many reasons, one including for herself. She's made this decision that she doesn't want a child. She's a child herself. She cannot have a child or raise a child. She's in detention. This also implicates that immigrants are not people, and that can't be the case. That can't be true. The other implication is that the federal government can force women to have a child against their will, and that can't be true. That can't be the outcome that we see.
Tomorrow at 10 a.m. in D.C., there will be a hearing that will essentially decide whether Jane Doe can get her abortion on Friday. The thing is, every day matters for Jane Doe. So as the court debates whether she can go to this appointment or that appointment, she gets further along in a pregnancy she does not want. And the number of doctors in red state Texas who are going to be willing to do the procedure shrinks.
I can't think of a better place than St. Louis. Why?
Land. We have 500 acres.
Hop on your bike and be in a brewing production plant.
The Philadelphia airport's a 15-minute Uber from here.
Frisco is a city that thinks outside the box. Hey Alexa.
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 Where should Amazon locate HQ to?
Today, final bids are due from cities hoping to become the home of Amazon's second American headquarters. And more than 100 cities are doing their best civic mating dances.
In their quest to land Amazon's new headquarters, local governments haven't just made a bunch of cringeworthy videos. They put together real bids with big incentives. Some are playing it cool, like Minnesota, which isn't offering any special new tax subsidies. But most are putting it all out there. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie recently announced his state is offering an incredible $7 billion in tax breaks every year. So why are places bending over backwards to lure Amazon? Because that's the game that's played these days. For decades now, states and cities have been promising big companies big tax breaks to locate in their borders. It's been great for politicians who get to tout their seductive job-creating powers, and especially for companies. For taxpayers, though, it hasn't always been so good. For the US economy as a whole, money spent on tax breaks is wasted, since it makes no difference if a company is located in Denver or Philadelphia. But companies have mastered the art of pitting municipalities against each other to get the sweetest deal possible. Good Jobs First, an industry watchdog, estimates that states and cities now give out at least $70 billion in tax breaks every year.
It
does depend on the deal. You can actually pinpoint the BMW plant located in upstate South Carolina was a pretty transformative investment for that community. But for every deal like that, there's probably more deals that went bad.
Crappy tax deals are all over the place. Rhode Island recently blew $75 million on a video game company run by former Red Sox pitcher Curt Schilling. The company only made one game before going bust. Sears got $150 million in tax breaks from Illinois in 2011 when it threatened to move its headquarters. The company's payroll has fallen by so much since then that it no longer even qualifies for the benefits. Amazon, though, is likely going to be a different story.
The first is just the scale. Up to 50,000 jobs. Even if they get halfway there, the sheer job creation is at a scale that we haven't seen from an individual company relocation. Since it's a corporate headquarters, those will be relatively well-paying jobs, so the quality of the jobs is also high.
Most experts seem to agree that whichever city or state lands the new headquarters will get more than its money's worth.
If we would be like the EU and just abolish interstate competition for firms, we'd all be better off. But for this particular deal, it's also not as straightforward to just say no city should offer incentive, because there is value here that is quantitatively and qualitatively different.
Unfortunately, for most places, there are only about 20 metropolitan areas that actually meet Amazon's baseline requirements. Parilla says Amazon is most likely to end up in a big city on the East Coast with a large research institution, like Boston or Atlanta. But if some other city finds a way to steal those 50,000 high-paying jobs, it might not end up regretting its humiliating audition video.
"50,000 transportation workers have walked off the job in France today as part of more than 100 strikes called by unions to fight against sweeping labor reforms that President Emmanuel Macron passed last month. Macron has bet his presidency on reform of the country's famously protective labor laws, enforce the changes through with the French equivalent of an executive order, pledging to liberate the stalling economy.
Je serai d'une détermination absolue et je ne céderai rien. Ni aux fainéants, ni aux cyniques, ni aux extrêmes.
But in a country where industrial strikes are a national pastime, rolling back workers' rights has proved near impossible for a succession of French presidents. And it's been no picnic for Macron. There have been about 50 local strikes a month and 24 national strikes since he was elected.
Je pense qu'il faut qu'on envoie un message fort au gouvernement pour qu'ils comprennent que tous les salariés ne vont pas plier et dire OK à tout ce qu'ils vont proposer.
Emmanuel Grandin is the archetypal French worker and exactly the image of French industry that President Macron wants to change.
When people see that the French are always striking, is this any different to any other time?
Oui, on fait la grève, mais c'est parce qu'en fait, il y a beaucoup d'attaques. Le nouveau président français, M. Macron, il va dire « Ah ben les Français, c'est tous des feignants » ou « Les Français sont tous des incapables » ou « Les Français... voilà, et les Français refusent d'avoir un président qui les méprise.
He's been in his job as a train driver for more than 20 years, over which period his union, Sudrail, has taken part in dozens of national demonstrations, sometimes striking on behalf of other industries just because their own job security is guaranteed. Like most in his industry, he has a generous pension topped up by the state, discount travel for his extended family, and a contract which says he can never be fired without massive compensation.
What would you say to those who are looking at France right now, looking at someone like you in your job, and that this is actually too much, that you guys have got it too easy?
Tous les politiques, tous les patrons disent que le code du travail, c'est trop compliqué, c'est trop gros, c'est trop... Mais le code du travail aujourd'hui, c'est ce qui protège les salariés, c'est ce qui empêche le patron d'être tout puissant et de faire ce qu'il veut, de pouvoir licencier comme il veut, de pouvoir...
Macron's reforms take power away from unions, allowing firms to negotiate rights and perks directly with workers, ignoring swathes of the country's biblical labour rulebook, the 3,500-page Code du Travail. It's a divisive move in a country which has protected rights in law ever since the 1848 French Revolution. Successive governments have vowed to trim the labour code and have ultimately only added to it under pressure from unions which date back a century.
Why does France have something like this when other countries, say the United States or the United Kingdom, don't?
La France aime le droit. La France aime écrire des lois et les Français ont tendance à empiler les lois les unes sur les autres. Et qu'on a rajouté des exceptions, mais le code a grandi. La taille du code, elle est un peu le signe de l'importance qu'on attache à la protection.
Despite the opposition of traditional industry, the promise of new flexibility over contracts means that startups and small businesses do support the changes. Florian Galbi runs a growing tech firm in Paris.
How easy is it to bring people on, employ people, and make your business grow?
Well, here in France, it's very complicated because the French labor laws are very strict and also complicated. We actually have a big HR department because it's just for contracts, it's a hassle. And I think with the new Macron laws that should facilitate hiring people, it should have an impact on that.
So what do you do now if you can't do that?
Once you hire someone and he's in city, you can't fire him. It's almost impossible. He's here for the long run.
Emmanuel Macron says the new laws, with their emphasis on flexible contracts, will make France more competitive and cut high unemployment rates. But pushing through the changes by decree, relying on the majority of his brand new En Marche party in the National Assembly, has contributed to his rapid fall in popularity since election. Olivier Grégoire is one of many new lawmakers with a background outside of politics, brought in to break this decades-old malaise.
Why are these labour reforms so important?
It's important because it's something that the President Emmanuel Macron said that he wants to do during the campaign. France must keep an important place in Europe, and to be strong in Europe, we must have a working environment which is far more efficient.
I mean, you mentioned Macron.
Yeah.
He's not been in power long, but his popularity has gone down considerably.
Yeah.
Doesn't that show that perhaps he's not going in the right direction at the moment?
We are not obsessed by being re-elected. We're obsessed by making the change we say to French people we're gonna make. And we are here to take risks, to move France and to make it better for French people.
It's been a month since a magnitude 7.1 earthquake killed at least 369 people in central Mexico. The quake severely damaged homes and businesses throughout the country's capital. About 38 buildings crumbled, and 2,600 are considered at high risk of collapse. At least 13 of those structures will have to be demolished. The government rolled out a program to help people who've been displaced, but thousands who don't have a real place to live are still struggling to get by.
Yo que tenía 9 años trabajando en la planta baja del edificio y 2 años viviendo, pues sí me da mucha nostalgia, me da mucha tristeza.
For the past month, 64-year-old Enrique Alcantar has been staying in a tent down the street from the dry cleaning business where he once lived and worked.
Gracias a un vecino que me prestó el burro y la plancha, pues empezamos las actividades. Ya hasta ahorita pues tenemos clientes que nos traen ropa para seguir trabajando, seguir luchando y tratar de salir de esta pesadilla lo más rápido posible.
Sí.
¿Qué dice Paulina? Hola, hermoso.
¿Cuánto es?
108. ¿Qué pasó, mi vida? ¿Cómo estás?
Así está bien.
Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias a usted.
Ya sabe que aquí le espero.
Enrique charges about $6 to iron 12 items. He hopes he'll soon have enough money to rent a place for him and his 20-year-old son. The building where his son used to work was also damaged, and now Enrique has to support the both of them.
Por damnificados que hemos perdido toda la documentación, pues hemos estado haciendo trámites. Señorita, vengo a hacer el trámite de una credencial. Mañana voy a hacer el trámite de un seguro de desempleo, en el cual nos van a estar apoyando las autoridades para nosotros que nos quedamos sin empleo.
He'll receive the equivalent of $132 a month for 6 months.
esto ahorita me preocupa porque nos llegan a quitar del campamento y a dónde me voy a ir a vivir. Voy a tener que demostrarle a la gente que no por ser una persona de la tercera edad nos dejamos vencer.
Years ago today, Wall Street had the worst day in its history. On what became known as Black Monday, the U.S. stock market fell 22.6%. At the time, Black Monday felt like a catastrophic, world-changing event. But today, people barely remember it happened. Some of that is because the 1987 crash seems like a weird anomaly. In the U.S., big market crashes have usually had big causes, like the 1929 crash that anticipated the Great Depression, the one in 2000 that burst the internet bubble, or the one in 2008 that followed the collapse of Lehman Brothers. But Black Monday had no obvious culprit, so why did it happen? When the market opened that day, investors were already panicked. Stocks had fallen sharply the previous week, and on Monday morning, Asian and European stocks had tumbled as well. From that point, a toxic mix of investor anxiety, new technology, and the decisions of a few big investors created a vicious cycle. Selling led to more selling, which in turn fueled a sense of panic, which led people to sell even more.
The problem on Black Monday wasn't that the market was falling. It was that the market was falling apart.
Helping drive this was big investors' reliance on computerized trading programs, which sold stocks whenever the market fell by a certain amount. These programs were supposed to protect investors against big losses, but every time they kicked in, they drove the market down further. Because there was no regulator overseeing markets as a whole, no one had a clear picture of what was happening.
All of these were bright ideas that came out of the financial engineering laboratories of academia and Wall Street that had great appeal and became dangerous only when everybody started to do them. You know, it's like a ship. When everybody runs over to the same side of the boat, it's going to capsize unless there's some ballast on the other side. Many more people were over on that side of the boat than regulators or even the marketplace itself realized. That's the danger of these fads, that they get adopted on a scale that blindsides us.
What Black Monday showed was that even without any big news, the combination of just a few key factors could bring down the entire market. And the factors that drove the crash are still at work today. Big investors dominate even more of the market. Computers do more of the trading. There's still no regulator overseeing how all these pieces fit together, and complex financial instruments have become much more common.
The importance of the 87 crash was it showed us how the new market was working. It's really a crystal ball. It showed us the future. It showed us how the market had changed while we weren't paying attention. What we need are markets that can withstand the shocks of an avalanche of buying or an avalanche of selling without cracking and breaking apart.
That's Vice News Tonight for Thursday, October 19th.